Hello, everybody.
Now there you go. So beautiful. Oh, there you go.
Welcome back to another episode of the Artful Leaders Interview Series. And that was a song called Beautiful by Absolute, who gave me permission to use his music. And I'm so excited to have a little jingle when I get on here. But I am thrilled today to have probably one of the most influential artful leaders that I've learned from today is with us. That's Dr. Judith Greer Essex. And this interview series is really about tapping into the wisdom, the experience, and the inspiration of folks who are leading in the world of arts, education, healing, and change, and really kind of getting their insights into how we move forward through this wild time that we're in, and developing tools and skills and practices and a bigger vision for how we move through the pandemic. So I was so excited when Greer said yes to joining me on this show. Greer has been such an influential leader in my life. She is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She's a registered dance therapist, a registered expressive arts therapist, and the founder of the Expressive Arts Institute in San Diego, and a professor at the European Graduate School in the Arts Health Society department, where I also studied. And so I've had the opportunity to study from Greer since, 2003, 2004, I think our journey started.
Early days.
Yes, early days. I was in the second group that went through the Expressive Arts Institute training. And so anyway, that's enough of me talking, Greer. I'm so glad to have you here. Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you've been up to.
Well, I think you said a lot about who I am. And you mentioned really my focus. It's arts, education, health, healing, and society. That really does sort of wrap it up. I think my projects, I'm working on a manuscript that I hope to publish next year, I guess. And I'm very interested in embodiment and how that comes out in the arts, the language of the senses. I'm giving another little talk on that in a couple of days. And I'm continuing to guide and direct the Institute because Rachelle, I deeply feel that the arts, with their ability to translate our knowing into images, is one of the most important ways that we can help ourselves, help others, heal others, and transform our society. I'm a happy revolutionary when it comes to aesthetic education.
Yeah. And oh my goodness, just when I think of that vision that you have and what you've been able to do as a leader in your field, and guiding so many of us to kind of walk this trail with you and trailblaze with you. And how many graduates have you had at the Expressive Arts Institute?
I think it's about 100.
Very cool.
About 100. And they have dispersed all over the world, really. Many of them, like you, are leaders in their own right, in their own fields of endeavor, teaching others, having just all kinds of projects, from children to executives. And it's exciting to see what has happened to our community, the community of the Expressive Arts Institute.
Yeah. And I just love that it has such a great reputation in our community, and just everybody that's come through there has emerged and done like such beautiful work. And I'm so proud to have been a part of that and still am. I have a peer group of women that I still meet and we still get together as often as we can. We just had a little reunion the other day and we all met in the early 2000s. So it's really, I think one of the things that's so powerful about the work that you do and the ethos of expressive arts is that community-based work, right?
Yes.
And that's something that I am really working to bring to the field of education, of how important it is for us to build community and to have a healing-centered community. And I was wondering if you could just share a little bit of your thoughts about the importance of building community and sharing our images together and just a little bit about all that good stuff.
Well, I think it's critical to our individual health, the health of our relationships, the health of our city or town. And, you know, those waves just continue to go outward. Yeah. People need to be embedded in relationships that they are accountable to and for. We need to be able to count on one another and trust one another and reveal ourselves to each other and share our inner lives with one another. So to witness one another and to be witnessed, this is what makes life rich, and it's sort of like an inoculation against all kinds of wounding and hurts. When we have a community where we really feel like, okay, I belong here.
Yeah.
This is my community, my tribe, whatever you would call it. I'm part of it, and we can take different roles. You know, I'll do this part if you'll do that part, or not even if, but we'll share different parts of responsibility that can move around, and people are developed in those roles and in those commitments. When they take on something, sometimes the emphasis is on what I'm doing for the community, but really at the same time, the person themselves is developing, is growing, is honing skills.
Yeah. And if you take everything that you just said and imagine you kind of overlay that over an organization that's serving young people and kids or a school, a lot of times we have this sort of academic focus where we want them to have these skills or achieve these benchmarks or whatever academically. And we forget that what ties the whole thing together is that sense of community that students are able to be a part of in that space. And I think a lot of times educators think like, I don't have time to build that, or I don't have time. We got to get on to this other important stuff. And I was wondering if you could speak a little to that. Like, why is it so important to take the time? Because I feel like as healers, we obviously, that's kind of like the work that we do.
Yeah.
But in these bigger structures where we need to embed wellness at all these levels, like why would we take the time to do that? And, you know, what's the payoff? What's the benefit? You know?
Well, I would say you're going to, take the time now, or you're going to take the time later. It's sort of like a preventative medicine, in my view.
Yeah.
I think that, from my point of view, it is an ethical obligation, if you will. Sounds pretty serious, but I'm pretty serious about it. It's an ethical obligation to do your own work and then take that work into whatever it is, your classroom or whatever it may be. To have a position of leadership, Rachelle, is a privilege.
Mm-hmm.
And with privilege comes responsibility. So I start with ethos, you said it, with the ethics and even more the ethos of a leadership position. It implies, just the word leadership implies that somebody's following.
Yeah.
And so what are they seeing? Who are you as a leader? What are you doing as a leader? I think that doing your own work does many things for the human heart. It expands your ability to have compassion, first for yourself.
Yeah.
And when we have compassion and empathy for ourselves, we're more likely to be able to extend it to others. We have that fund, if you will, of compassion that we can center in and work from. And there's another benefit, maybe not often talked about, but when you're having interactions with others, your body can be relaxed and your mind can be peaceful. And it is from that centered place that the relationship, the reaching out and the reaching in of the relationship occurs, particularly for young people and children to interact with an adult who has a peaceful body and a relaxed mind, or a relaxed body and a peaceful mind. That in itself is a very, very helpful thing in my view. Whether you're working with clay, or you're outdoors on the playground, or you're working with math, that kind of peaceful empathy and open-hearted curiosity, I call it, the ability to see what someone is doing and extend yourself from the heart to them, that can go a long way.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, when you were talking about, I kind of want to like unpack some of the things you said. I feel like a lot of times in leadership positions, people can be kind of reactive. And like what you were saying, like you can spend the time now, or you can spend time doing something later. And that something over here is like, cleaning up damage and wreckage.
Right.
Right. And then you have to rebuild. Whereas when we take the time at the beginning to set things up for success for ourselves, for those we lead, whether that's other adults or other young people or children, then we get to just keep refining the system, right? And I also find when, as leaders, if we kind of forget that it's a privilege to be there, and we kind of abuse that sense of power, and we think also like, well, I'm the one who does everything, right? I'm the one who fixes the problems, and I'm the one that makes the decisions. When we build a community together, like you said, all these beautiful strengths get to arise, where different people get to hold different parts of what makes this a special place to be, and get to emerge in this really authentic way that reflects the culture of the folks who are there, which in this time is something we're finally starting to pay more attention to, right? It's like that culturally responsive stuff and the social justice uprising that suddenly everybody's like, oh, we got to do that. But when we come with a community building heart and intention, we automatically do that. We create that equity because we're kind of leveling the playing field and the power structure, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes. And within that perspective, the ongoing cycle of abuse of power and persons can stop.
Yeah.
We can break that generational change, which is terrifically important to me.
Yeah.
We can't have the peaceful world that I desire if we're doing aggression on each other all day long. And I like what you said about the position of power. That is very, very potent and needs to be handled with humility.
Yeah. And I think a lot of us come to these positions of leadership with a vision, with a sense of calling, and like this this is, I'm being pulled forward into this, this is the work of my life. And so when we allow others to kind of come along with us, we're going to make such a bigger impact than if we're out here like slashing and burning by ourselves. And
Right. I think what you said about people feeling pulled or called to something, it very often has a me focus.
Mhm.
And the who am I serving
Yeah.
focus could. I don't think this is universally true by any means, but the danger is that you might think about you being the leader and forget about who you're leading.
Right.
And the focus, I think the focus needs to be on who is following you
Yeah.
and what do they need from you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that, I feel like, leads us straight into why the arts and this aesthetic education is so powerful, right? Because when we connect through the arts, when we create spaces for our students, our staff to explore through the arts, through various rituals, through all kinds of games and play, we get to know each other, right? And we build relationships that are real and that aren't top down, right? We get to find out who is in our community, who is here, what do they need, what do they love, what do they care about, what do they want, and how do I get them what they want? Because that's my job as a leader, is like get you what you ultimately really want, right? And in your life,
Yeah.
not what I want for you, but what you want for you. But we won't
Right.
know that. And that's where I feel like explorations in all of the arts can be so powerful, for us to kind of do all of that together. But I'd love to hear more of your thoughts about that.
Well, I think that, first of all, when you enter into an aesthetic playground,
Mhm.
lots of things are left outside. Maybe your shoes, as we did community art and ETS. We left our shoes outside, but that's symbolic in a way of now we're all barefoot on the ground. And of course, when I'm thinking of aesthetic education, I'm not thinking of that kind of structured and degreed ladder of fine art mastery.
Right.
I'm thinking of really expressive arts where, yes, there are forms, there are frames, there are formula, theory, but we enter in at the same level of opportunity to participate.
Yeah.
And it brings out what I will call maybe the inner life.
Hmm.
I always think there's the bill paying household keeper life, and then there's the life of the psyche, the life where I am not necessarily bound by my literal situation.
Yeah.
So you can find the person with limited literal equity who has a fantastic voice or can move like bamboo or has a wonderful, wonderful color sense. And in this expressive community, this artful community, this healing community, people can rise and have leadership and accolades that they won't get in a literal situation.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, and then what can happen? Let's say it's a child who has very modest literal opportunities, literal equity. And he comes in and we notice, wow, this kid can keep a beat. He's got wonderful pitch. He has a natural inclination or picks up very quickly the art of melody and solo. And now he comes from being, Johnny with less
Yeah.
to being Johnny the musician.
Yeah.
And the whole identity has changed because he's added a role. He's now this and this, but he's also Johnny the musician. And musicians notice different things than other people notice. And it just literally sets his feet on a different path.
Yeah.
And I speak from experience. I've seen this many, many times directly myself, and also from the stories that my student interns have told me. Well, I'm sure you've had those experiences, Rachelle.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what I was so in love with, with working at the Monarch School, where I, ran the Therapeutic Arts program and worked with youth who were coping with homelessness, and how we were able to just transform their sense of who they were through the arts. And exactly what you're saying, you're not this invisible kid on the streets. Suddenly you're a painter, you're a dancer, you're a poet, you have a voice, you're part of an ensemble, you're part of, you're an artist who is displaying their works for the community to enjoy. And I remember so often people would say, wow, like working with those youth, that must be really heavy and they're dealing with so much hard stuff. And yes, there were times where the stories that emerged were gut-wrenching and were painful. And most of the time, the work that we did there was very joyful, because it was like and that's another one of our principles, I think, in expressive arts, is we get to move away from the problem and the joy of exploration and just being in the zone, in the flow of our senses, and enjoying the paint and the music and the dance or whatever.
And each other.
And right. And all that camaraderie that we get to experience when we create together.
And another part of that is that we learn by doing.
Yeah.
We couldn't paint when we came in the room, but by painting, we learned about painting.
Right.
And so we're adding. And I like to really think restoring, because Homo sapiens are naturally art-making species. It really is a birthright for all of us. But Western culture being what it is, we decided those people would dance and we people would watch, and that's fine. I mean, I love seeing, Pina Bausch's dance company. What could be better than that? But everybody can dance, and you don't have to be a member of Alvin Ailey's company to enjoy dance and to really do it well enough to satisfy yourself and to contribute to your community. That's what I'm after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something that I'm starting to hear more in, there's a professor by the name of Dr. Sean Ginwright at San Francisco State, and he talks about healing-centered engagement in education, and how, when we're aware of the problems or whatever that our students experience, we could spend a lot of time focusing on what's quote unquote broken or not working, or we could focus our energies on creating the wellness that we want to see, right? And having those experiences of joy and liberation and collaboration and all those things, and heal as a result of those experiences and learn as a result of those experiences, rather than just focusing on, well, these are the symptoms we don't like, this is what we want to change. And, let's shift and have a community that is full of love and play and connection. And so often when I work with teaching artists or other folks, they think like, oh, if I'm going to focus on social emotional learning for young people, that means that we need to talk about the problems. And I'm always like,
let's find another way. What the theories of expressive arts therapy, the intermodal expressive arts therapy that you and I practice, says that the solution may not have much to do with the problem. Solution-focused therapy also does this, I might add, but we do it through the arts. And what's interesting to me, Rachelle, is this: you can do this on a one-to-one, in a couple, in a family, in a small group, in a huge group.
Yeah.
And people will change and rise up to the challenge. That's what I teach community art at the European Graduate School, and it's one of my favorite things to do because I've got 100 people in the room, and we're making dance theater together, and music and chorus and text, and everyone contributing and finding their place in that. And for many people, when they're coming to the school for the first time, they haven't really done anything like that before. So it's exhilarating.
Yeah.
And when you are that happy, I might say, you really do see things from a different perspective, a different lens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I could go on and on. I mean, there are at least 18 different ways that people change from their dire straight story to a more ebullient story when they're in the studio situation.
Yeah. So you just named a very specific number. Tell me about these 18 things.
Oh, I don't think I could pull them out of my head. But, it's like this. You go from being all in your head, blah, 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 to having your body energized. You go from seeing things in one perspective to having your perspective widen. And these things happen as a natural consequence, I guess, of being involved in this kind of community art making,
Yeah.
or art making guided by these principles of any kind, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it is, I think the thing that I love too about expressive arts is it's really art for all of our sake, and it's not I encounter so many people so often in my work with educators. They say, I'm not creative or I'm not artistic. And they have this kind of like a wound around that, right?
Yeah.
Like what it means to be creative, or sort of like what checks the boxes according to someone that makes you creative. And
Well, we all know what that myth is.
right.
The painter going up to their garret and painting alone at midnight, or the writer doing the same thing. Uh, our stories about creativity have left out the part where everybody's gathering at the coffee shop and exchanging ideas, and come over to my studio and see what I'm doing, and I'll come over to your studio and see what you're doing, or I'll read you this draft. The social, interactive, supportive aspect of creativity is left out of our stories of how people create. And also, like I said before, Homo sapiens, some people would say we survived because of our creative impulse. And we've been, your 50th great grandmother was an artist with a small a, well,
Yeah.
maybe with a capital A. But all people were dancing and singing and decorating their homes and themselves and telling stories, and yeah, we were all doing that.
Right.
That's our birthright.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's a language too, right? It's like if we were learning Spanish, we wouldn't expect to be fluent in Spanish after day one.
Yeah.
We get to practice the language and play with the language and
Yeah.
experiment with all these different words and different conjugations to come to the message that we want. And it's the same with the arts. Like the more we do it, the more we're able to communicate, or we're able to create something that feels just right. But a lot of folks, I think like, oh, I just suck at this.
Well, I like to go to the principle of expressive competency. When the sensitivity to the material is heightened and there is the right frame and atmosphere, everyone can express something that is adequate to their needs with simple materials. Yes, I agree with you. Our knowledge and our skill grows over time with exposure and coaching and so on. But everyone can make something out of something that expresses their experience.
Mhm.
I really, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I agree. Yeah. So here we are at the sort of hopefully the ending of this crazy time. This crazy, crazy time that we've
I
all
think
been.
maybe,
Man,
yeah.
maybe. I mean, I don't think we're going to go back to normal, and I kind of hope we don't. I mean, I hope that we spend some time really revisioning what that is. But I'm just curious, like, what your thoughts are as we move through this time and forward, for us as a society, for us who are educators, you know, all the big stuff. Greer, come on.
Um, well, I, fortunately or unfortunately, am such an optimist about our ability to change. I'm just always, honestly, Rachelle, I am always just really shocked when really stupid things happen in our culture, like things that are so anti the human spirit. I can just hardly stand it. And I feel like, gosh, you know, I'll be 76 next Tuesday. And I think I'm thinking like a freshman, you know, but I just cannot extinguish my belief and optimism in human beings. I know we can do it. I don't know if I'll live to see it, but I know we can have a more peaceful relationship with one another. Our differences, when they are about ourselves, can really add to the rich savor of our experience in our communities. They should be, our differences, in my view, should be celebrated and thought of as resources for one another. So, my hope is that with COVID and with Black Lives Matter and that whole movement, which has certainly taken the covers off of institutional racism for some of us, some people have known about this for hundreds of years. But hopefully, there are elements that have been like bread dough. The yeast has been mixed in there, and these knowing and activated people will come forth and join hands and make change. Unfortunately, I also know that there are people who have been so hurt and or so frightened that this movement of joy and connection and acknowledgement and respect is terrifying.
Yeah.
Terrifying to them. I get it. Or at least I understand. I see the terror. I see
Yeah.
the actions that speak to me of fear.
Yeah.
And hatred of the other.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I mean, there just have to be more of us.
Yeah.
I really think there are more of us. And I think the more people do their own inner work in relationship to whatever aspect of our society or their personal history is holding them back, then the more there will be of us.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is really the heart of what we do, right? Is that healing work so that we can come together and create a more just, peaceful, loving, equitable world.
Yeah.
Where whatever community we're starting in, right?
Right. Wherever we start. Let me ask you this. Did you find through your whole Expressive Arts Institute and EGS education that something important or big or that something changed within you?
Oh, absolutely. And I don't know that I could even like put words to it in, and like on the spot, but for me, there was this sense of liberation when I was able to recognize sort of like the creator that I am and to create with others, and then to see how powerful that is in whatever situation I'm in. When I
Yeah.
bring that lens, it is just so transformative. And so I feel like a lot changed inside of me, and just like you were saying earlier, then we bring that to wherever we're going, right? And
Yeah,
yeah,
because that's who we are then.
yeah,
And that's how we live and how we breathe and how we carry forth.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah. No, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, we're not afraid to show that inner self.
Yeah.
It's not appropriate everywhere. You got to go to the grocery store, but want to be holding forth your poetry in the canned goods aisle. But for when we are in touch with that and that is nurtured, then we have that to offer
Yeah.
others. And
Yeah. And yeah, I think that there's something about, and I'm sure others could probably be more eloquent about this restored sense of just humanity
yeah,
that this kind of exploration gave me and has allowed me to hold space for others.
yeah,
And when I lead, I'm able to lead with vulnerability, and
yes,
and show others what's possible when we kind of take the armor down, and when we allow our hearts to shine, however imperfectly, what we can create together in that space has been really powerful. And it's ultimately what allowed me to do so many cool things in my past career and is allowing me to do cool things now. So
yeah. It's sort of like, hey, I found something good. Let me share it.
yeah,
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 it comes from a generous place.
yeah. And it's really that curiosity that also led me to start to speak to folks that I'm seeing as artful leaders. Like, what does that look like? How does that work? What are the characteristics? What do we get to create together? What are the tools and the skills? And and there's so many people. I'm having fun sort of mapping them out with this little interview series. So
Yeah, yes. And so now you have a club.
yeah. But it's not a club, but like a fancy membership club.
Right, right. It's a club of identification. Yeah, of shared values and
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So, well, I'm wondering if you have any like final words that you'd like to share with listeners. I mean, I feel like you said a lot about hope, and that feels good.
Yes. Well, we have to have hope. I mean, and I see great evidence of change. I do. I see a lot of little green sprouts here and there and everywhere, things coming up.
Mhm.
Um, well, final words. I think I go back to one of your first questions that we need to take care of ourselves and then share that.
Mhm.
And the care and feeding of a Homo sapiens. We need to sing together and dance together and paint and play and make a big mess and then clean it up. And yeah, you ask me, do I have another minute?
You have whatever, however long you want.
You ask me what roles we might play in our students' lives. And I just came up with a list.
I love it.
You love a list? I like a
Yeah.
list too.
Yeah.
So I thought about, okay, a leader, is a role model. What does that mean? It means I'm showing you through my actions, because a role belongs to an actor, and what an actor does is act. So I'm showing you through my actions what this role entails.
Yeah.
And so here are some of the roles
Love it.
that I came up with. Well, first of all, a leader, meaning I show the way. And then a teacher, I give information. A mentor, I help you. A torchbearer, here's the light in the darkness. The sage or wise elder, I have experience and I will share it with you. The clown or the holy fool, I don't know what we're going to do. Maybe you know what we're going to do. That humility of the clown. The midwife or the doula, let me sit here patiently and wait with you and attend to you while this great work that you're doing emerges. A cheerleader, you can do it, rah, rah, rah. A coach, now try it again, one more time this way. Take 2, take 3. And a confidant, I'll listen with a deep and inner ear to your whatever, your troubles, your worries. That's my list so far.
I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love what you said in the context of a role model. Like there's all those roles, right? And we get to model so many different ways of being and doing things. And
I think about this in relationship to myself as an expressive arts therapist and also a professor, that sometimes I have to wear this hat happening all the time. Different person, different hat, different class, different hat, different time, different hat. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that means we've got to like have our regulation on board, because we're like improvising, throwing on a different hat, having a different,
Yeah.
right? It's really important.
Yeah. Yes, that taking care, relaxed body, peaceful mind, and whatever it takes to get there. That's one part. And the other part is artful healing community.
Yeah.
People, and we need to build it now. If you don't have it, get it.
Yeah.
Because here's another thing I thought, and then I'll be quiet. I thought that you mentioned COVID, and some families, Rachelle, have had a personal COVID, a devastating illness take their loved one. Now, of course, we're all sharing in this kind of heightened awareness and fear of this virus. But that notion of devastating illness, that's not really new. And the racial injustice, some families have been experiencing that for 400 years, more. And so, but now we all kind of see it. And, the 9 minutes and 29 seconds.
You can't unsee it, right? You can't unsee it.
You can't unsee that.
Right.
And so now what has been a private horror is a shared horror, a shared fear. And now those images have entered the consciousness of our society at large, both of COVID and of George Floyd and the others. So now we are activated with those images, and we can take action to use those for our own growth, healing, and development, and reach out to other people. We can heal ourselves, but we can't really heal alone.
Yeah.
We need each other.
Yeah. 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 Well, that pretty much wraps it up. Yes. And So I didn't get a chance to say this for those who are watching. I'm with Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting, and my work is really about helping organizations and schools that are working with young people to do everything we've talked about here. So if you're interested in that, follow me, let's connect. I would love to support you as you're moving through this time. And if you are interested in learning how to do this work, you get to talk to Greer because the Expressive Arts Institute is a wonderful training program, and so is EGS. So I will post some links under the video. If you want more information on any of those things, we would love to connect with you. And Greer, thanks again so much for joining me today.
It was such a pleasure, Rachelle. Is this what we have to do to see each other?
Yeah. Well, hopefully soon we can meet in person again. I'm almost fully vaccinated, and hopefully we can be in our community again soon.
Oh, I hope so. Thank you very much for this opportunity, Rachelle. It was really fun.
You're so welcome. I'll see you soon. Have a wonderful day and see everybody next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.